All right, welcome to our Gates Social here on May 24th at the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. We're getting ready to have a session with our CEO, Sue Desmond-Hellmann. Sue is a medical physician who previously worked at Genentech and was the chancellor of UCSF. She's been here at the foundation for 2 years, and she recently shared a letter on some of her reflections on what she's seen and also what her vision is for the rest of the year. So please give me a hand in welcoming Sue Desmond-Hellmann.
Thank you. Thank you. Welcome, everyone. First and foremost, I want to officially welcome you to the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and we are honored by all of your presence. I am particularly excited about this opportunity because, as hopefully most of you know, I'm on both Twitter and Facebook and now LinkedIn, and really enjoy reading many of your comments. But specifically what I wanted to talk about today and answer questions and have a dialogue with all of you about is my very first CEO letter. You all know that Bill and Melinda write annual letters, which we all look forward to and enjoy greatly. And of course, Warren Buffett is particularly famous for his annual letter. And so I thought, in the spirit of my bosses and our trustees, it was good to write on paper thoughts. And I also felt after 2 years that I continue to be surprised by a couple of things. One is how much people are wondering about what we do at the foundation. So despite what seems to me to be a lot of visibility, there's still questions in people's minds, or they say, it's kind of fuzzy to me. What do you actually do at the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation? So I thought I could decrease a little of that fuzziness or that lack of understanding of what we do. But the other thing, and I hope it comes through in the letter and you all saw this, there's some surprises at the foundation. There's some things like tobacco that people actually didn't know we worked in. And there's some other things where it's not such a good surprise. I'll nicely call them learnings. And I talked in the letter a little bit about our experience in US education, where as excited as we are about Common Core, and we're all in on standards, we heard back from teachers that they needed more supports. That was a learning for us, and we've adjusted. And I think in the spirit of transparency and wanting to be a learning organization, it was a great opportunity for me 2 years in to reflect on those kinds of learnings so that people understand that we want to be better and do better, like everyone in life, and sharing that gives all of us an opportunity to take some risks, knowing that not all such risks will pay off. And the last thing I'll say about the letter, because I want to hear your questions and talk more about any of the elements of it, the letter is an opportunity for me to celebrate partnerships. So smart partnerships is a very critical part of how we operate in everything we do. Most of the partnerships I talk about in the letter are external partnerships with companies and governments and other foundations like Bloomberg Foundation. But one of the things that I also hope comes through is the partnerships within the foundation. I'm really grateful that I get to work with amazing people every day. And I talked about how some of those people interface with WHO or UNICEF or Rotary or the government of Ethiopia or government of India. And so my colleagues at the foundation are amazing. And I wish you could meet all 1,500 of them today. But I consider myself their representative because that kind of partnership within the foundation and outside the foundation is the only way we get to impact, get things done. So questions? What would you like me to dive in and talk more about? The letter or anything else? Yes?
Thank you. I was very struck by the sort of honesty of your letter and how much you shared the successes in the areas where you still have a way to go. The weight of expectation upon the foundation in combating very cruel diseases is huge. And does that ever keep you awake at night?
I would say that yes and no. So yes, I profoundly feel the suffering that the foundation works to solve. Not long ago, I came back from a trip where with Alan Goldston, one of my colleagues, and Mark Sussman, we had an opportunity to talk to a couple of young men who had been incarcerated when at an early age they interacted with the criminal justice system. And these two young men talked to us about their experience of trying to get a job. And I couldn't get it out of my mind. I just felt so sad to think that somebody at the age of 23 felt like their options in life were so limited. And you know, I remember when I was 23, I felt like anything was possible and I would live forever. That's the way you're supposed to feel when you're 23. So it's not uncommon for me to be with colleagues and interact with people who are telling me about their life experiences in school, in life, a mom talking about her child, and I just want to cry. But you know, I trained as a cancer doctor, and so I think that the thing that I feel grateful for in the work I've done, and particularly in the work that I get to lead here at the foundation, a good remedy for anxiety or sadness is trying to figure out what to do. You know, I'm an action-oriented gal, and my colleagues are too. So with these partnerships I've talked about, how do we think about that mom, that young man having a chance at life? And so I think that the best remedy for anxiety I know is to double down on the commitment to make a difference, to do something about the problems of the world. So when you do that, you can sleep well knowing that the assets that we have, this incredible gift that Bill, Melinda, and Warren have given the world, that we're turning that gift into action. So that lets me sleep.
Good morning. My name is Sue Bachtel, and I'm from Wilmington, Delaware, and I'm a teacher. I loved your candidness in your letter, and I was wondering if you could talk a little bit more about your full court press and listening to teachers.
So I would say a couple of observations, and I want to anchor my comments into something that hasn't changed. When I think about improvement in high school graduation rates, now we're at 82%, I'm happy. I mean, we need for young people to graduate from high school and have a chance at life. When I then look at the statistic that only 40% of American students graduate from high school ready for college without remedial classes, I don't feel good about that. So the doubling down is saying, yes, we continue to believe in standards. And you ask any teacher, I'll bet if I asked you, do you believe in standards? Yes and no. Okay. So what I've heard from teachers is the yes is, of course a high school diploma should mean something. And that's a universal feeling that it should matter, it should have meaning. When I hear the no, it's, hey, wait a minute, I've got a classroom, I've got to get ready for that classroom, I'm trying to put in place curriculum and supports, and I need to have more time and more input so that I'm ready to use those standards and be an effective teacher. There's also a lot of dialogue about assessments. So those two things, getting ready for the curriculum that teachers need and the supports for those, and having a really healthy dialogue about assessments, those are the areas of feedback we've received. And so what I mean about doubling down, so we have supported the Math Design Collaborative and the Literacy Design Collaborative, MDC and LDC. These are really terrific tools, but they're not there for all teachers. So we need to make sure there's more effective materials. We need to make sure that teachers have access to those materials and their input so they get to use their gut, their instincts, their classroom learning. And we need to make sure that the teachers have the time to get the preparation and to do what it takes. So all of that is, again, a renewed dialogue with teachers to make sure we support them and make the investments we need so that teachers have what they need to support the Common Core. I'm glad you liked my honesty. I have to say that it is completely reflective of my colleagues here at the foundation and all of our partners. People have been listening hard, and the thing that students, teachers, parents, superintendents, communities, and the Gates Foundation all agree on is this fierce commitment to student success. I was just happily at Georgia State University giving their commencement address 2 weeks ago. They have a vice president of student success. They have a vice president of student success. I just loved that. And I came back thinking, there's a lot of dialogue and discussion in education. You've been a part of it as a teacher, I'm sure. Here's something that everybody agrees on. All of our energy ought to be on student success and what teachers need to translate into student success. So it is specifically materials and teacher-driven tools that they need to make Common Core real. There's a question here and a question in the back.
Hi, my name is Megan Ice Proctor, and I'm from Safe Passage Project in New York City. And I love that you're embracing this idea of transparency, particularly as a young nonprofit who's making mistakes and growing quite a bit. And I wonder if you have any tips or comments around the best way to communicate those trials and errors and mistakes as they happen to funders, to the public, or anyone.
I definitely have tips on that, and I'll tell you where my tips came from. So when I became the head of product development at Genentech, my job was to oversee the group that ran clinical trials. So we would ask the question, that was our job to ask the question, is new drug A safe and effective for human beings who have cancer or a blinding disease, so that this should become a new medicine? That was our job. That's what I did morning, noon, and night every day. One of the things that I think is very important, we all read the press about new medicines, right? And when you're in a company and you know patients are waiting for a new drug, especially, as an oncologist, I would think cancer patients need new drugs. I so wanted every trial to come out positive. But that led for me to have a bias, that I wanted the trials to come out positive. It was good for patients, good for business, good for my team. So I really pushed myself first and then my team second to turn that upside down. I rewarded people and gave all my good jobs for asking and answering a question efficiently. Sometimes that answer was no. That medicine's not safe or not effective. Our job was to efficiently ask and answer the question. In the work we do in philanthropy or the not-for-profit sector, we often say at the Gates Foundation, we want to take risk. We want to try things that haven't been tried before. So an example might be a new vaccine, a new medicine, a new diagnostic, a new approach to curriculum or teaching. Our job is to ask and answer, is this helpful? Did we achieve impact as we wanted to? With our partners, did we make a difference? And so I would tell anyone, when you ask and answer questions efficiently, you're doing something helpful. The transparency comes because when you try something new and you ask the question, is this a good thing? Sometimes the answer is no. There is a better way. And so I think having the discipline to know when you're trying something new or innovative, that not all new innovative things are good. So both being open and honest about when the answer is no, not yet, not quite, and secondly, to have really good metrics, what people call M&E, the measurement and evaluation part of not-for-profit work is really solid. So if you were looking for a number 5 and you got a number 6, that would be a no. And so having the rigor to set really clear metrics and having the intellectual honesty to say, oh, we tried that and the answer was no. And particularly when it comes to new things in health, but really anything. If a farmer's using new seeds and they're either not helping the soil or not turning into more productive crops, that's really important for those patients, those farmers, that community to know the right answer. not the answer that's kind of, I wish it were yes. There's a couple questions in the back row. Yeah.
So what is the foundation going to be doing in the future around financial services for the poor or pro-poor financial services?
So I'm really glad you asked that question. One of the most exciting programs I've seen since I've come to the foundation is our program on financial services for the poor. And I think it's exciting for two reasons. One is it brings into play a concept that I really like, and I wish I could figure out how to use it more often. People call it leapfrogging. So when I lived in Uganda, for about a little over 2 years. It took me 14 months to get a phone. I was trying to get a landline, and I would go to the post office and say, how's that phone coming? 14 months. Landlines are really tough in low resource areas. So what most of the world has done is just leapfrog landlines, go straight to mobile phones. So mobile phones are so ubiquitous now, no matter what people's income is. So that's a huge opportunity for us that the world has taken this leapfrog beyond landlines. The second thing that I really like about the financial services for the poor is we've all read about loans, microloans, that's famous, the object of a Nobel Prize. But microloans went so far and really didn't change the world as much as all of us would like. So our financial services for the poor team has started to think about what are the policies that would enable this ubiquity of smartphones to allow for people to have everything from insurance to savings to sometimes loans, but not thinking of one entity, microloans, but really a panoply of different services that particularly the poor might need access to change their way they think about the future. And the other element I really like about our strategy, you'll see more of this in the future, is thinking about how we link our mobile money, digital currency, financial services for the poor to women and women having agency, and to farmers, to smallholder farmers. So smallholder farmers can have access to things like crop insurance or savings that can get them through shocks and climate change. So watch this space. It's really exciting.
Hi, I'm Cheryl D'Ambrosio of Seattle, and I was just curious regarding volunteers versus paid professionals. Where does the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation work with volunteers versus paid professionals, and any advice you have to an organization that relies entirely on volunteers?
Gosh, that's a really interesting question. I haven't been a part of a big dialogue at the foundation about paying people and volunteers. I'll tell you what we have an aspect of the foundation we haven't talked a lot about, and I didn't talk about it in the letter, but we really believe that it's great to be generous. And you've all read about the Giving Pledge. So we have a group and a director at the foundation that works on what we call philanthropic partnerships. So our philosophy is it's all good. And I've often talked to people about something that I've learned over the years, and I actually include in my annual New Year's resolutions. I might say, improve my diet, get more sleep, do more of this, do less of that. Every year for many years now, I have as a part of my New Year's resolution to be more generous. Now that generosity may be that somebody decides to go into the not-for-profit sector for their job, but they actually need to still pay a mortgage or pay the rent. So in that case, I think it's very important to have the conditions for work that anyone would need in the not-for-profit sector so that they can have a happy, productive life themselves. On the other hand, people may be in a position where they can volunteer, and that's terrific. So our focus is generosity, good. All different kinds of partnerships, excellent, because the world needs lots of people to care about philanthropy. I would say whether it's a volunteer or a paid person, the thing that I can come back to over and over again is impact. Will a volunteer workforce allow you to create the impact you need? Will you get the time? Will you get the commitment? Will you get the expertise? And one of the things that I think is important is to really push that agenda. Are we in a position to create impact? I can say that one of the things that we saw in the recession in the not-for-profit world is it is possible to starve either entities or to have such low resource situations where you just can't get things done. And I think that's the big watch out is, do you have the talent, resources, and do you have both the human capital and the financial capital to achieve your goals? Because if you don't, it's frustrating and it's really not worth the causes that we all care about so much. So I think that's the thing to, rather than think, is somebody paid or not, what is the capability you have to cause things to change for the better?
Hi, my name is Jaya Badika from Sacramento. First, I wanted to thank you for the wonderful work that you've spearheaded at the foundation. My question is, how do you choose going forward what priorities you'd want to focus on, given that there's so much compelling need in the world?
That's a great question. First of all, I'll say it's challenging. Yeah. And there's a lot of healthy dialogue we have in the foundation. So I said this when I first came to the foundation, and it hasn't changed. Bill and Melinda have helped us to set the priorities for the foundation, and you know about the priorities. They're global health, global development, U.S. programs focused on education, and then policy and advocacy. And that includes this wish for philanthropic partnerships, the philanthropic sector to thrive. So within that context, we ask several questions. What's the impact on equity? We really do feel strongly that all lives have equal value, and this equity agenda is our North Star. So that's where we start. In areas of health, we ask about global burden of disease. What's the impact on the world of us focusing on malaria or tuberculosis? So global burden of disease is a very important vector for us. What are the conditions that seem to disproportionately affect the poor of the world with that equity agenda? So smallholder farmers, we know the struggles out there to feed your family, make some money. Financial services for the poor really can help with this equity agenda. So it's an anti-poverty strategy, so to speak. We know that equity is improved as U.S. education improves. So that's another lens for us. And then the final thing we focus on is, what's the foundation good at? Where do we have some skill sets and capabilities, like any organization, where we can add to the dialogue and have some expertise? So we always use that as our filter. And on any given year, there's opportunities. I talked about African sleeping sickness in my CEO letter. Now, African sleeping sickness is something that disproportionately affects the poor, right? It was in this category of neglected disease, neglected in no small measure because of poverty. And right now, we have some great new tools. So we want to pounce when the time is right. There's a question here, here, here.
Hi, Sue. I'm Art from Los Angeles. Great annual letter, your first annual letter, and spectacular write-up in the Times as well. I have a question regarding what would your thoughts be on the best practices that you've encountered, or the best ways to build effective partnerships in emerging countries with governments, with organizations, nonprofits, for-profits? What are some of your thoughts on that?
I would tell you a few things, and I definitely talk about partnerships in the letter. Here's something that's universal. All good partnerships start with respect. All good partnerships, whether you're at a biotech company, at a university, at a foundation. And so I always start thinking about, what does that person who's my partner know that's going to create a condition where we'll make an impact more than if they didn't bring that to the table? So I think respect is where all great partnerships must start. The other, and particularly in low resource areas, that I think is a part of partnerships that's essential, is thinking about capacity building and capability building. So increasingly, as we interact with countries, I'll give you an example. We work a lot on vaccines and in vaccine preventable diseases. Knowledge of supply chain and the cold chain are essential parts of working with vaccines. It's been an important part of our polio program. So as we've built the polio control program with multiple partners globally, that polio program brings a lot of capacity building on supply chain. So when places like Nigeria, Pakistan, Afghanistan partner with us, one of the critical success factors is making sure the partners have the capability to effectively implement a supply chain. And so that makes for a good partnership. And the more we're really transparent and clear about those capability needs, the better off the partnership will be. And the final thing I'd say about partnerships that I think is really important is they need time. And so I've talked this week a little bit about the sense of urgency and the impatience we have, and how we have to balance that with the knowledge that both capacity building and solving the world's hardest problems take time. So we have to balance our sense of urgency that people are suffering and our sense of urgency that we want to make change fast with that need to build capabilities, to make sure that our own capabilities at the foundation, as well as those of our partners, are built methodically with attention to the most important capabilities the world needs for these problems. Okay. I think there's a couple in this second row here who haven't talked yet.
Hi, I'm Tyler. I live in Seattle. So my question's a little bit offhand, but I feel like
an offhand question.
Watch out. So I feel like you talk a lot about what the foundation does, and that's awesome to hear about the work you guys are doing. But I'm curious to know more about you as an individual. So a lot of people in my generation identify with a certain series of books, and so I was wondering if you have a certain animal or creature that you would identify with as your spirit animal, or if you are familiar with the word a Patronus by chance. Harry Potter. But
oh, I'm not a Harry Potter person. Oh gosh. So what animal would I think of? Probably a pesky fly. I think I'm more of a pesky fly than anything. Now, I have to say that the books I read when I was a kid, I read Nancy Drew books. I really liked Nancy Drew books. I like a good mystery, and I like solving mysteries. I'm really glad that young people nowadays can watch NCI and think of themselves as a medical detective. It's the part of medicine I really love, is problem solving and the detective work that goes into it. I think that's why I like Nancy Drew. The part of medicine I always liked is if somebody came to see you and they are sick and they don't know what's wrong, and you figure it out and you can solve it, and there's a remedy, I always like that the best. So those are the kinds of things that's why I'm a pesky fly. If I don't have a remedy, I want to make one. But I didn't read the Harry Potter books. I'm not sure if I could catch up by reading them later. That might be in the cards. I read the Hunger Games books. I actually liked all three. Those I did like. And I kind of like the movie.
Good morning, Sue. My name is Kingsley. I work at the Fred Hutch. My question is, how do the foundation deal with, less transparent systems or corrupt governments in terms of making sure that the donations that have been given actually do the work?
So a couple comments on that. First, there's something that the foundation focuses on first and foremost that I think is really important. There's areas of the world that are incredibly difficult, that struggle with poverty, war, upheaval, corruption. If we stayed away from every place in the world that is challenged by those issues, we wouldn't be helping the people who in many ways need help the most. So I think that anchors us into thinking, okay, we have to figure out how to do that, not whether or not to do that. So I think that's a tenet, that the people who are struggling shouldn't be punished if their governance, for example, is. Now there's a point where it's unsafe to work, and we're careful about that, but that's a tenet for us. So we try to work very hard to find partners who have integrity and a common wish with us to make a difference. And those partners may be NGOs, private companies, governments. We use auditing. We use best practices. And we are extremely careful and thoughtful about tracking where the money goes. And we work with partners right away if there's any questions that come up. So I think that the best way to do that with a partner is to quickly say, oh, there's a question, and to ask and answer the question and have backup strategies. So there's a number of best practices we employ to ask and answer those questions. But if we come into a problem, we try very hard to be objective and straightforward with the correction needed and the fix, because we always have a line of sight to impact and the people who we're trying to serve. And we don't want those people to suffer bad consequences because we've had an issue or a problem. If we see an issue or a problem, we try and solve it objectively and together with partners to seek a solution. So we don't put up with bad things, but we're always focused on impact and the people we want to serve.
Hi, Nicole Narulios-Gupte with Philanthropy Northwest. I'd like to hear more about the Foundation's home being here in the Northwest. Yeah. How does that influence the culture, and what kind of risks are you able to take here at home?
So a couple things I think are really important. Seattle and King County are our hometown, and we're happy about that. So I think you see around you, for example, the place we sit is a center where people can convene. The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation is a beautiful foundation, and with artwork and a visitor center. So it starts with feeling like we want to be part of the community and part of what people and their kids can experience as part of that community. So the visitor center is a really important part of that. Beyond that, we have a Pacific Northwest program for philanthropy that is specifically aimed at philanthropy in our region. That partnership has focused on things like family homelessness, early education, violence against women over the years. And in fact, we're looking at that strategy right now, and just in the next several weeks, I'll hear an update on our future plans for our Pacific Northwest strategy. Here's what I like about our Pacific Northwest strategy. One, it anchors us in our local community. And two, it's almost like a learning lab. So when we looked at things like early education, we learned a lot that we can export to our more national programs on education. So it's a huge opportunity for us. And the other thing that we have done at the foundation, I hope you guys have read about our new parental leave policy, 52 weeks of paid parental leave. That's 5-2. And so parents, moms and dads, yeah, we should clap for that. So as an employer, we can live up to our values here.
It makes for some very interesting away messages.
It does make for some very interesting away messages, and it makes for some really great career opportunities for people who are filling in for mom or dad. It's been great at the foundation. And the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation also has a wonderful matching program. And so all of us as employees, and we have a wonderful opportunity to learn about local charities and local causes. And when we donate to those causes, we have a great match from Bill and Melinda. So I hope we're a good citizen. One of the things that I've also participated in is Challenge Seattle, which is looking at our region and challenges in the region, everything from education to traffic, and other things that are opportunities for us to get better as a region. Question right here in front, and there, go ahead, go ahead.
Good morning,
you have the mic.
My name is Chad Maxwell. I have a question. You have 1,500 employees across a broad spectrum of services, from agriculture to financial inclusion to health. How do you get the shared learning across them, and how do they work together to improve your overall impact and dollar spend?
So when I talked about smart partnerships, one of the smart partnerships is inside the foundation. Like all organizations who are as ambitious as we are, we can be faced with silos. So we do a lot of what you'd call vertical programs, and it is really challenging to work across. So for me, it starts with the executive leadership team. So everyone who reports to me comes together and talks about how do we interact together horizontally. What are the things we share? How can we efficiently put out contracts and grants? That's a shared philosophy. How can we transform how we do information technology, human resources? So one of the aspirations we have as a foundation is to work on our culture. And part of that culture is to make it easier to learn lessons across, share best practices, and think about working horizontally. A couple things that have happened at the foundation since I've been here that I think help with that. One came from Melinda. She challenged us to put gender and a gender lens on all of our work. It's a very horizontal way of thinking, right? That horizontal way of thinking makes us ask in the agricultural team, wow, how do we think about the smallholder farmer who's a woman? And I mentioned before the financial services for the poor team said, well, you could think about it like this. If she has mobile money, she could be paid and have access and agency for her own capital. We know that with regard to family planning, girls' education matters a lot. What did we learn in our U.S. program that might impact on our international family planning? So thinking about gender, really an important horizontal way of operating. I've talked a lot at the foundation about precision public health, how we bring data science, basic science, sequencing, and this precision way of thinking about health to our ambitions in global health and public health. That, again, is a horizontal way of thinking that brings people together. So I don't think we have this solved. I think it's a huge issue for us, like any organization like ours, and thinking more and more about people having easy access to what their colleagues have learned so that they don't have to relearn the same lessons, and we can learn more effectively from each other, even though people are on the road and very focused on their thing, which I'm actually excited that they are.
I had a little bit of a similar question. My name's Kristen. I work on Ed Tech in Menlo Park, California. And so, like, when we're trying to serve schools, we think about, like, sometimes there are underlying causes to why maybe our approach is not going well. And then, for example, maybe there's a health issue or access to health. So how do you guys think about that overlap in not just sort of work practice, but in topics and when one thing sort of fuels another?
Yeah, a couple observations on that. So if you look in the last year at Robert Wood Johnson, so I know Robert Wood Johnson because of their tobacco work and their health work as a physician. And one of the neat things that Robert Wood Johnson's done over the last year is really push themselves hard on looking at what we call social determinants of health. And I've talked a lot to Risa, and we've had some great opportunities for dialogue around how we could think together about education and health because of their ambition to think about social determinants of health. I've started to ask Alan Goldston, what are the social determinants of education? Because there's a mirroring of that. You know, what's your ability to learn if everything outside of the classroom is tough for you? So I think that work is really powerful for us. And one of the things we've set up in service of that question is our poverty partnership. So we have funded the Urban Institute for a 2-year journey with 24 experts, practitioners, academicians, lots of talented people to share broadly. This isn't reporting to us, this is reporting to the world on how have we learned about the ability to have mobility out of poverty in the US. What's proven? Where are the research questions? Are there investments we should and others should be making on inequity above and beyond our educational investments? And that's in service of exactly the question you're asking. Are the investments we're doing necessary but not sufficient? And if so, what would make them sufficient?
We've got our last question here.
Last question. Oh my gosh, that went fast.
There's a lot of pressure.
You guys, yeah, this better be good.
It will be. Heather Zambrano, representing Colorado Springs, Colorado. And I know the foundation has given a lot of resources and money towards charter school education. And I want to know what your thoughts are about the future of charter schools in this country.
So we are pro-charter and pro-district. We're pro-kids and pro-education. And I think I think the next couple of years are going to be really important on the charter school front, both in terms of quality, because we think charter schools, like all schools, should be accountable for good output and good results, and that's been mixed. We also care deeply that, as exciting as some of the charter results are, and they are, and we're really intrigued by them and want parents and families to have access to that kind of excellence, it's a tiny proportion overall of all of the students who we want to serve. And so you will see our foundation continue to support charters, but not exclusively, because we don't think that charters in and of themselves scale fast enough to reach all the students and families we want to reach. But I think it's going to be, my prediction, I don't have a crystal ball, I think the next couple of years is going to be really exciting in lots of things. Now we have much more power back to the states. What that looks like, how parents and states drive their agenda of student success. I for one, think that I'm not a parent, but especially for people who have kids in K through 12 and in college, this is a time like no other where this nation has focused on education. I think we all have to push ourselves to say that needs to help students. We need more students, no matter what their zip code, no matter what their income, to succeed, and charters will be a part of that. We were out of time.
Yes. Thank you, everyone. Let's give her a round of applause.